Hello. Hi. My name is Inua Ellams. I'm a poet and a playwright, but I started a project in 2005. Wow, 12 years ago, called The Midnight Run, and this is our current logo. It's pretty simple, but it gets the job done. It's kind of in your face. And I'm going to show a little video about one of the midnight runs. So I don't want to introduce the midnight run yet because I'm going to show you the film and then I'm going to talk about it. But could you go over to Vimeo, please? Right, and that is the Ideas Tap Midnight Run, and this is the film itself. Thank you. So, thanks. Next slide, please. I love that noise.
There we go.
Okay, cool. No, next one, please. Yes, there we go. So, there are 34 Midnight Run videos, and nothing really communicates what the Midnight Run. Who thinks they get a sense of what it is from the video? Okay, but a few people, yeah. And this is because you just have to kind of come to the Midnight Run to truly experience it and to get it. It started in 2005, and this is how it started. I was poor, I was broke, living in South London, and I had lots of time on my hands, so I used to walk around the city just trying to get lost, and I used to write poetry to myself. And lots of people who were on my poetry mailing list, I began to ask them if they'd be willing to spend time exploring the city with me. I kind of sent out this dodgy email saying, you've seen me for like 15 minutes on stage, want to spend 6 hours with me? And ridiculous enough, They did. And initially, I began to run little poetry writing exercises during the course of the midnight run. But as I began to do so, I realized the little icebreaker games that I did before that, lots of people were really getting into that. They just loved talking and playing with each other. And then I began to make those icebreakers longer and longer. And that was the key to create into the very foundations of the Midnight Run, which is really about gathering strangers to explore and to play through the streets of a city for a duration of time. The Midnight Run now, I have a sort of a slogan that works. The Midnight Run is a walking, arts-filled, nighttime cultural journey through urban spaces. It gathers strangers and local artists or activists to explore, play, and create whilst the city sleeps. And that is primarily what it is. I invite local artists to run interactive workshops during the duration of the Midnight Run for 6 hours or 12 hours, where we eat, we play, we discover, we write things, we create for each other, and we really explore who we are in alternative ways. Most of the sort of conversations you'd expect in the Midnight Run is, why do you like the color purple more than the color green? Or when was the last time you farted? Or what was the most awkward conversation you've had? They're questions that ask us to tell stories about ourselves, to explore each other, more than they are questions about what we do for a living. And the icebreakers and the games are designed to create and generate more, I guess, honest and truer interactions between people. And next art forms, please. And we sort of experiment with very, very different art forms or modes of interaction and engagement. So we've had drawing teachers, we've had rappers, we've had poets, we've had spoken word artists, we've had journalists, guerrilla gardeners, musicians, choir leaders, choreographers, physical theater makers, acting coaches, graffiti artists, ukulele makers, fabric makers, urban historians, sculptors, puppeteers, tailors, cocktail makers, filmmakers, architecture historians, photographers, Greek wrestling instructors, Bollywood dancing, political speech writers, radio documentary makers, Tai Chi instructors, parkour instructors, Greek wrestling coaches again, sound designers, mindful eating, and more. And all of these were created essentially for things that happen outdoors in sort of unused spaces, and for the people who come in the Midnight Run between 35 and 40, just to explore, to sort of create and foster new relationships with the city. Next slide, please. And this is designed purely for one thing, to give adults the permission to play. That's really it. And cities can be really hostile environments for everyone, for young people who can't afford to play in it because of the closing down of youth centers or after-school services, for older folks who are sort of slower members of society, and because the cities are incredibly fast-paced places, they sort of feel left behind sometimes. For the poorer folks who can afford to actually engage with art forms or just afford time to relax and chill, we try to work with five different artists in each Midnight Run and introduce Midnight Runners to various art forms for just one night. And those interactions or workshops last between 25 and half an hour each. Also, there's sort of also really difficult places for people who have really high-powered jobs who can't afford to just switch off. And Midnight Run kind of caters to all of these kind of people. And all of the workshops are carefully chosen and designed to do one thing, like I said, to give people permission to play and to rediscover who they once were. I remember I had this mother, her name was Claire. She was in her late 40s, and her daughter had been born 12 years before that. And this was the first night her daughter was staying over at a friend's house. And she would have had to spend the night alone, at home alone. And that terrified her. So she came to spend the Midnight Run, spend her nights with the Midnight Runners. And for her, it was a space just to rediscover a time when she was just a single woman, before she became a mother, and to do this in a group of people she'd never met before, which meant that it was a safe space for her to play. She could have been anyone she wanted to be that night. There's no question, and no one's gonna do budget detective work to find out who you really are. It's the perfect space for anonymity and for play. And the last Midnight Run was about 2 weeks ago. The Midnight Run also can be really tailored to kind of anything. The last one was specifically focused on Black history because of Black History Month, while we're still in October. But it was also about Brixton as a hub for Black British history. And I had a Black sort of historian who knows London from a Black historical point of view. And we sort of co-created a design, a route through the city, which focused on things that happened in Brixton, which have sort of been forgotten. One of the things, for instance, is that the Notting Hill Carnival started above a shop, which is now a sort of a carpet shop now on Brixton Road by this lady who was kicked out of America for being a communist. She arrived on the streets of London, and this was just when there were race riots in Nottingham and in Notting Hill, and she was trying to do something to celebrate diversity and to take the taste of riot from the mouths of Londoners. And when she was discussing, someone said, why don't we just throw a party? And this was in November, and someone suggested a carnival. And she said, this is like in November in England. This is a bad idea. So initially, the Notting Hill Carnival took place in a town hall in Brixton, indoors, and there were just dances with people in fancy dress. But that suddenly became the Notting Hill Carnival, which is visited by about 2-3 million people each year. So again, this is just a part of Brixton history, which came out one of the things that we visited. There was a father who came to the Midnight Run, a white British man, and he came with his 2 twin sons, 11-year-old boys, and he had no idea what to expect, and we purposely don't tell the Midnight Run participants what to expect. We just say, come expecting the unexpected. So he came, and I saw these 2 boys with him, and I thought, are you sure you're going to be on the streets with us for 6 hours to midnight? And he said he wasn't too sure, but he would just see what would happen. I said, okay, but if you ever feel pressure, you want to go, it's completely fine. But they ended up staying for the whole night. There were these 11-year-old boys who were exploring Black British history. They were writing poetry, and they just left their father behind. They were dancing across, the streets with us, and they just did everything. They were introduced to physical theater, to poetry, they had their first taste of Caribbean food outside my flat because that's where we chose to eat. And he sent me this message the following day. Thank you so much for yesterday's event. I really did not know what to expect, which was absolutely part of the magic. Personally, I learned and experienced so much in a short space of time, and I had the added privilege of being able to watch my children interact and be tested on a whole host of areas, which made me so proud to observe. Everyone in attendance was so warm, positive, and supportive, which I believe was due to the incredible, unique atmosphere that you managed to create through your own coordination and natural ability to bring people together. At some point, I work predominantly as a poet and a writer. My work is getting a little bit crazy, so I realized I couldn't do all the midnight. I have 2 minutes left. I couldn't do all the midnight runs. So in 2015, I expanded. I trained 6 people in how to do midnight runs, and I got a producer, Georgina Bednar, who is in the audience. Georgina, could you wave your hand, please? There, she's sitting up top there. And it just meant that the midnight runs could happen without me leading them. And we've had midnight runs across Europe generally, in Paris, in Berlin, in Barcelona, in Madrid, as far afield as Perth and New Zealand, in Auckland. And some of the changes we face are 3 main things. One, again, me being too busy, I had to train other people, so that was the first one. Second is always the privatization of public spaces in cities, which is happening because of massive companies or whatever are coming over, buying whole swathes of land, and we think it's public place, and we want to play through it until we're there in our numbers, and there's a security guard with 3 henchmen behind him saying, sorry, you can't play here. And we have to explain about what we're trying to do and why we feel like we own the city as opposed to these invisible companies. And 3 is the cost. The Midnight Run, I typically always come up with little ideas, which are very simple but very expensive to put to actualize. And the Midnight Run is one of those. Oh wow, good, no worries. Next slide, please. I left the slides behind. There we go. Thank you. And So to plan the midnight run properly, we need about 10 days to do it properly, and we have to pay all the artists that I invite to come and to design workshops. And all of this means that the typical midnight run costs about £4,000 to just to execute it properly. But the thing is, if we were to put that cost on the 30 or 40 people that come, they'd have to be paying about £150 to £200. So that isn't really tenable, and we're trying to figure out ways to do so. George and I have butt heads quite a few times, and we've settled on one thing, which is trying to get investors to give us about 50 grand a year. If you know any millionaires, philanthropists, please send them my way. This is the end, George. So, okay, right. So I'm speaking so fast. So we have 3 midnight run mottos. Next slide, please. Pardon? Okay, cool. So the first one is loitering for hipsters, which sort of communicates partially what we do, but not so much. The second one is to discover after dark. The third is not all those who wanders are lost, from Tolkien. And the last, which points to sort of the wider ways in which it works, is this. Because we can't see the stars for fumes, we turn to smashed glass, believing shards shine like constellations do. And this is the Midnight Run website. The last slide, please. www.themnr.com. And thanks for listening to me. I think I breathed twice that time. Thank you.